Alrighty, we are
I'm so
back.
excited. We've got a wonderful guest coming out.
I know, don't we love it? You know, and I love the connections from one person to another, and it wasn't really all that long ago when we were actually like at the International Women's Day breakfast.
You mean the International Women's Year?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's
the
day,
International
month,
Women's Infinity.
year. Exactly.
Yeah, that's where we met Robyn.
Yeah, because you're sort of, if you haven't listened to Liz Courtney, she's amazing. She's been a guest there. And so through Liz, how you meet other people. And so we were really lucky. We were MCs at this fantastic brunch full of the most inspirational women in the room. Talk about uplifting, mentoring, having a laugh. It was just sort of like,
perfect.
It was so
And I'm
good,
not a
wasn't
morning
it?
person at all. And I'm like, what time are we going to be?
A couple of coffees into it, yeah.
I could go to the early hours of the morning. But, yeah, so what I love, to be honest, because we go to a lot of functions now. Initially, it was like, who are you? No, you can't come, slam the door. Now it's like the doors are open. Yeah, yippee, we're coming.
In our happy place.
But at some of these functions, you and I, we are so the same. We are so on the same page when it comes to people.
We are.
And I give you a look.
I get.
If we don't like them, it's usually or whatever. But generally, we are on the same page. And we both met this woman that we're about to interview, and we both went. It was almost in unison.
It was.
If we feel that, we know that the listeners will all get it.
I agree.
The inspiration, because that's what this podcast is all about. And this woman oozes that. In
She
every sense
certainly
of the word.
does. And I sort of think if you haven't heard the name of Robyn Foyster, I don't
not
really
Forster,
know.
not
Yeah.
Foyster.
Yeah. Foyster, you know,
With a Y.
to be honest, really, she is the queen of everything in media. You know, she's sort of been in the
that.
industry for so
Where's
long.
your
and it's
tiara,
just-
Robyn?
Yeah, I think so. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Robyn, and I really want to sort of sing some of her praises. She really is. She's a multi-award-winning journalist. She was the editor-in-chief of the Australian Woman's Weekly. I mean, seriously, that is the
Bible.
most... Yeah, it is the Bible, the country's most iconic magazine, really. And then there's been Women's Day, there's been New Idea. She's worked in the US, she's worked in the UK, she's done TV. I think she's done like nearly everything in media over the decades. But she hasn't stopped there. She's now embraced the whole digital shift, launching Women Love Tech, the Carousel and Game Changers, championing women in tech, business and entrepreneurship. She's a leader in AI, AR and digital innovation, a global speaker on leadership and technology, and a mentor to women making bold moves
Honestly,
in their
Robyn,
careers.
can you do
I mean,
anything
if that
more?
wasn't enough, and I've even heard
Seriously.
she's even put the Spice Girls on TV
I think
for
mine's
the first
like
time.
one
I mean,
line.
really.
Mine's like, I did television,
And that's
just
only
podcasts.
the beginning. I think, as one of those
Bloody
says,
hell.
Liz Courtney says, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Welcome, Robyn, to the back
Love
fence.
it. And we really did mean what we said about meeting you and
Yeah,
wanting
we
to get
really
you
did.
on.
Can I say it was mutual? I tell you, you guys were just a breath of fresh air. And the fact that, your friends comes across. And, in that room that day, there was this real, all mainly women. There were some men, but it was, you really feel the energy when you get a group of women in the room. And there was a lot of love for everyone there.
Yeah,
so
it was a love in.
Really, really loved
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
and we had that a few weeks before we were at a MC at a function. It was 300 women in a room. And Nicola and I always went, oh, my God, if one more woman comes, I went, it's just women. Oh my God, it's just women.
Yeah.
And it was an excitement, this effervescence, and I'm like, and we felt it in the room too. So it was a bit of fun.
Yeah, you got to have fun at these things. And, I think we all did, which was the main point of it. And getting some good speakers up talking about interesting stuff always helps.
Well, we had a lot of those on that day, let me tell you.
Absolutely.
So, look, I think Nicola's done the major intro to who and what you are. But to be honest with you, I think... as I did mention earlier on, that you are an inspiration. I think the only way to start is, as Nicola did mention, UK, LA, and of course being involved in Australian media. But how about sharing? Also, you can spice things up with the Spice Girls and tell us that story too.
But quite a funny story.
Run through it, not like chronological order with your career, but if someone's listening and would like to be inspired, such as should I leave our fair shores to go and get inspired, or enhance my goals or my visions or whatever, and head overseas. Sort of give us a rundown of how your career came about.
It was funny. I started as a first racing journalist female racing journalist in Australia.
Racing?
Racing.
As in
Horse racing, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Giddy
yeah.
up.
Yeah,
incredible.
giddy up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gee.
Which was quite fun,
Pete
actually,
Overton-
because you'd go,
Pete Overton
with your
did that.
badge into the racing, room in the Jockeys Club, and they'd sort of go, sorry, you're a woman. And go, no, here's my badge.
Wow.
But that was
Wow.
probably helped by the fact that my dad was a racing, I had a stud and was a breeder, bred racehorses, and so I grew up around horse racing, going on in my life as a young girl, and on a big horse stud in Mudgee. And so I sort of lived in Mudgee and between Mudgee and Sydney, and when I got asked to go to England on a trip, I stayed there. I got a job at one of the newspapers, and I was only 23. It was a bit scary at the time because they asked me how much experience I had, so I lied.
Of course.
It's the only way to
Yeah.
the only way to get
But
that
it's
first
called
job.
lying with confidence.
Yes. Yeah. I said, we only have experienced journalists of, minimum 3 years on a Fleet Street newspaper. I said, yep, that's what I've got.
6.
Double
that.
Yeah.
Good girl, go girl.
That's it.
So that was quite fun, and it was the first colour newspaper in the world called Today Newspaper, and it was a mid-range newspaper, and they did things differently. In fact, actually, my first gig was as an environmental reporter. And back then, if you remember, there was CFCs and they were killing
everything.
basically they were killing the environment. And one of our jobs was to sort of like profile, the different stories and bring that to people's attention. And we did, and they stopped, doing CFCs, which was a really positive climate success story, if you like. And it's good when you get that sort of a result. But I went from,
you save lives.
Yeah.
God's sake.
And we actually, funnily enough, just recently I spoke at Climate Action Week on a topic which was interesting about how do we flip the script on the environment. And we had a number of different people from the media, including Liz Courtney, who you
love her.
just had recently on the show.
Very popular too.
Yes.
Yeah, and a great documentary maker, and she's so passionate about the environment. So, but it's interesting, because we all suffer a little bit of really sort of doom and gloom, and there's a lot of negative stories put out there about climate change. But to actually get involved and keep people away from having climate change anxiety, you've got to give people hope and actually present some of the good things that are happening out there, which of course there are, and also ways that people can actually present stories in a more interesting fashion.
True.
In media, because
And
media.
did you do that?
Yeah, well, look,
In
I think-
London?
in London. I tell you, we had the most amazing time in newspapers back then.
Back in the day. So what are we talking, the late 80s? I'm
88.
guessing? Yeah,
1988.
that's right.
Yeah.
I remember
Nothing wrong with that. I was flying in the airlines in 88, flying to the UK. And
It was a fun time. Like they sent us, they sent us on stories all around the world. Like I
wonderful.
covered stories in Belfast on the first non-denominational school, which was paving the way to stop the whole problems with the, what was happening in Ireland, which was very serious back then.
was.
Very much so.
And then I got to do things like ski trips in Switzerland and
What, as a
Austria.
As a story?
Yeah, they actually.
Hello.
They would say to me,
I think that was a
Kids
bit of
like
a...
yeah, would you like to? One
Aussie.
one request I got was, we're looking for single women to go on, do a story about what it's like to travel solo. And I said, yeah, hand up.
Sounds
Always
like a
hand up.
hoosh.
And they said, where would you like to? Would you like to go riding in the Andalusia mountains, or play tennis in Sicily, or would you like to? And I'm like, yes, all of the above.
Yeah. How brilliant.
I love hearing
Yeah.
stories like this. It's sort of like for all the listeners there, it's sort of like if you get an opportunity, just grab it.
What do you say? You say take a leap of. You say take a leap of faith. Just go for it.
You just go.
Just take that leap.
Just take
Yeah,
it.
It's true.
Jump into it.
As
So-
my brother says, go for it.
Go for it.
Go
with
go
it.
for it. You've got to go with
Oh,
it.
what
Go
is
with it. Go with it, isn't
So
it?
Yeah.
okay, so that sounds like. I mean, you're inspiring me to get back into media. Podcasts will do. Thanks very much. No one's
where it's
offering
at.
trips
Yes,
overseas, but they will.
Yeah.
I have to say the most inspiring thing that I did, I got the opportunity to do a story which it just wouldn't happen for a journalist today, and that was to go to the Sahara Desert with a woman who'd lost her husband in a plane crash during the 50s after the war. And she just got married. Her name was Olwen Haslam. And we became lifelong friends after this incredible journey. Wow. And we flew to Algeria, and then we went to one of the refugee camps in the Western Sahara. Which was quite an extraordinary thing. There were like 40,000 people, and we were part of a group that brought medical supplies. And because they loved the story of Olwen trying to see her husband's final resting place, the Sahrawi people said that they would take us into Mauritania, which, like now, is the most dangerous place on the planet. And to get there, we went through sandstorms. We slept out under the stars. She was nearly 70 at the time.
What about your hair been done and your makeup? I'm very concerned. How old are you at this stage?
I was 23.
Wow, you're still 23.
Yeah.
Geez, you packed a lot in that year.
I did. Wow. So we get there. This is we get to we didn't think we could find this place. You know, we were facing sandstorms, you name it. We did find the gravesite of her husband, and she never remarried. That was what was incredible about this story. Is Ted Haslam was the love of her life, and he died 6 months after they got married, and Olwen never remarried. And when we got there, because no one spoke English, but we did have the translation, the thing that she asked was, tell me, we met someone who was a young kid at the time who remembers him coming in from the desert with the others. He was the only person who passed away at the oasis. Everyone else survived the crash, but he had injuries. And she wanted to know what were his last words. And the person, said, he said, oh, the wind. And I went, it's a funny thing to say. And just tears just flew down her face. And, of course, the last words were Olwen, her name.
Oh, the wind.
Olwen. Oh, God.
Well,
and so did you write a story about this?
Yeah, but they let me go for 3 weeks on one story, which is just...
the budgets were different then,
They
Robyn.
certainly were.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
still,
Mind you, we were eating,
nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, but 3 weeks
But
out.
Robyn, you sort of said at the start with Di and I, the connection with friendship. It's a very sad tale. You know what you said.
Excuse me, everyone.
But how wonderful! You've actually formed a lifetime friendship for something like that.
Olwen, and she became like a second mother. So when we came back from the desert, and the deserts are really beautiful places. Like the Sahara Desert. We were the first Westerners to cross into Mauritania in 20 years because there'd been a war, which is why she wasn't able to go and find that gravesite. And when we got back to England, she was so taken by what she saw with the people, young kids who'd lost their legs in the refugee camp, fleeing from Western Sahara, which had been taken over from Morocco, that she raised money by doing something so incredible. She got Christmas cards. You don't think of something like this today. She repurposed the Christmas cards and sold them for 30 pence each. She raised £15,000 doing that.
Wowza.
Good on her.
And that went back to medical supplies to the Western Saharans.
So is this which newspaper are you working for?
Today newspaper.
So that's the first coloured one, and then where did you go from there?
And coloured's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, we always became we just were such good friends. I ended up doing that story many times, so much so that there was this boy who was on that flight, and he was only 6 months old. His name was Richard. And I said, damn it, I'm going to track that man down. He must be, 50 now, right? So I'm going to find him. Well, I did.
No.
I found him in New Zealand.
Well done.
But you can't escape from Robyn,
no, detective. Watch out.
There's a warning.
But the BBC tracked him down at the same time. So they took her back this time to find the actual to go and visit the plane crash with Richard, and he still had the old, because back in travel, you'd remember how different travel was.
Oh, yes.
Back in the 50s, it was for very
That
expensive.
was before I was
elite
born
I
then.
was
but,
thinking
you know,
that. I was thinking,
I don't mean
nah,
you
not
remember
Nicola.
it like that.
Hey, Robyn, we're chicks of the 60s.
She's seen
you know, like
photos.
that, like that.
That's
So
why
like
they-
the
so
80s,
like-
that's what I mean,
That's
exactly.
where they employed women. You had to be
But
single.
I understand. We
Exactly.
understand that it used to be very different. Like
Yes.
they had something like so many people looking after the very few people that travelled. Anyway, he brought this teapot from the plane, and they took it back to the desert. So now in her 80s, she goes back into the desert with Richard, she becomes like a second mother to him, and they find the fuselage of the plane crash. But this time, the plane has almost disappeared because people, that's the amazing thing. It's sort of like got swallowed up into the desert, and even the seats became used in classrooms. So it was a story that just kept going on and on.
So all of
That's
this
so
is about
interesting, isn't it?
igniting your passion for stories.
Yes,
Yeah, it is.
absolutely.
And hence your whole
Stories,
life.
friendship.
To this,
and friendships that
Yeah.
come from it, and
Yeah,
good
remarkable.
things that come from it,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So how long are you with the coloured newspaper for?
Today newspaper. I became a consumer columnist, and in fact we called ourselves Consumer Cops, and we did crazy stuff like, I'll tell you what we did, things that we'd see something on TV where they'd get a pair of Levi's and they'd test how quickly the Levi's would rip apart by two cars. So we'd actually road test that. Or we do a story. We made things fun. We get a story on umbrellas, and so I'd take it into a wind tunnel where they were testing Boeings, and then see at what speed.
I love
get
it.
a poor model
How
standing
kooky.
there. At what speed did the turn upside
Oh,
down?
wow.
Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
I love it.
And then another thing that we did, which is actually funny, when you look at what happened later, is I got a chef called Bruno Lubé, who was like a top French chef at the Lanesborough Hotel at the time. And I went into a very poor school in East London, and I asked them what their budget was for making, for the food for the day, because they were serving up very, very unhealthy food. And then he did some amazing food as a result. And then I'd interview the kids, compare the food that they'd eaten, which they really liked, to the food that they normally get, and then ask them where they normally eat, and it's like McDonald's and everything like that. Anyway, that was a great story. But, of course, that's then I saw on TV that Jamie Oliver then went and did something very similar to that, and which is fantastic because he took it to America and and actually changed the eating habits of like a whole country.
He certainly
You trailblazer,
did. Tell us,
Robyn.
now you went to the US as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then what you were actually doing, you were doing TV. What did you like? So did you like being
Producing.
on the screen?
You're producing.
Are you
Yeah.
actually on the screen too, or behind the screen?
I was
as well?
both.
She was doing both.
I did both.
yes.
So I was the West Coast correspondent for a show called Big Breakfast.
Yes.
And Big Breakfast.
That's big.
Yeah. Remember Paula Yates?
Correspondent,
She used to do these interviews on the bed, the sofa, and whenever I'd interview people.
Who married Michael Hutchins?
I was
Michael
thinking
Hutchins.
that,
Yeah, and they met on the
Very
breakfast
sad,
show too.
sad,
didn't they?
sad
Yes,
ending.
yes.
Yeah, it was actually
Awful.
terrible.
Awful.
But when I was in LA, I would say I'm from Big Breakfast, and all the celebrities would go, "Oh, so where's the bed? We're going to do the interview on the bed," because they're so bored with the types of interviews
course,
that they normally do.
understandable.
They're
Yeah.
like, at least that change things up a little bit. But
That must have been fun for us, for you, was it, Robyn?
yeah. There was one very funny occasion, and it was I was asked by another breakfast TV show called GMTV, which I ended up working on for quite some time, and they asked me to help get backstage, get celebrities on, live camera, live studio interviews during the Oscars. But of course, I didn't have time to get my Oscar accreditation. So I had a Scotland Yard card, which was out of date, and I had a great hairdresser and got a...
Which is essential in LA.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And I said, I'm going to the Oscars. I want hair higher than heaven, just like do your bit. And then I had a party at my place, and then just sort of like closing towards the end of the Oscars, I hired a cab and said, take me to the Oscars. And you wouldn't believe it, but we passed all these crowds and crowds of people. And then when we got to the end, I thought, I'm just going to keep going. I've got to pass. I just said, where's the media room? And they just kept directing me until I got upstairs to the media room where they said, where's your accreditation? Finally. Oh. And I said, it's this card, out of date, Scotland Yard card. And they said, I'm very sorry, you can't go in. So I went down one level of stairs and there was a door. So I opened the door and, oh my God, I was backstage where the Oscars was taking place, and Harrison Ford, my hero, was there on the stage.
Oh, how brilliant. You had your hair done, so you looked the part.
I realised I could have walked right in and said, hi, I'm Robyn, I'm from Mudgee.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can't keep a good country girl down.
We had Wendy Harmer on, and she was sort of saying how when she went, to the Oscars, and she said that I think it was her kids and nieces and nephews are back home, and they're watching TV, and they're sort of saying, there's Harrison Ford, there's all these celebrities, and they're going, and then there's Auntie Wendy.
Who had breast milk dripping down. Those are Oscar stories, really funny.
I followed Harrison Ford because, if you see Harrison Ford off stage, you're just like, I'm going where you're going. So he gets in a lift and I'm just sort of looking up at him.
Oh my God.
And what happens after the Oscars is they basically have a bar and they all drink. And, back then it was when Steven Spielberg's big film came out, and Liam Neeson was up for
he makes my knees shake, that one.
Tell you this random wafting around the Oscars. This is incredible.
So this is good. So you've gone rogue.
You've
gone there.
This is a story.
At this stage, I'm completely rogue. And
go, Robyn.
I'd just done an interview with the Bel Air Hilton, the Bel Air hotel manager, and he sees me, goes, Robyn, I wasn't expecting you to be here.
Oh, of course.
I said,
VOP. Excellent.
I'm from Mudgee, it's fine.
Yeah. Who are you with? Oh, I'm with Emma Thompson. And
they're my mates who I hang out with.
So I did go round. It was the year of Schindler's List, and I remember, it's sort of pertinent actually, because I did hear Liam Neeson saying to Ralph Fiennes, saying, mate, it'll be your turn next time. And of course, we've just had the Oscars, and I sort of was hoping maybe he might have got it, but he didn't. He missed out again. It did remind me of this night. But we went round to, I finally realised I had to actually do my job and not go rogue, because I was enjoying it too much, like ear wigging on all of these celebrities. So I go around the other side, and then I see, of all people, Thomas Keneally. Thomas Keneally wrote Schindler's List.
Incredible.
And I don't know if you...
A lot of people don't realise that.
It was called Schindler's Ark.
Yeah.
And so I sort of say, because I'm working for a British channel, and I just think, this is amazing. So he introduces me to, of all people, the star, who I thought was like, it wasn't just... it was all... the people that I admired most in that book was, one of them was Oscar... Pappenberg, and Oscar Pappenberg risked his life and helped Schindler to get to save these Jews. And I met him, and I thought, I realised all of a sudden that you have all these celebrities here, but this man who had he had the concentration camp tattoo on his arm, and I saw it. Was the real hero. And the story here was interesting because for 12 years he rang Steven Spielberg every week asking him to run the story and do a movie on
Perseverance.
On Perseverance, yeah.
That is a great story in itself.
In
every
itself.
listener to go, it took... for 12
Never
years.
Give up.
Never
ever give up. And you hear that quite a bit in life, don't you? When they keep on going, keep on going.
Because they believe.
Yeah.
And that nothing is going to stop them.
That's right.
It's true.
And
that's
and
amazing,
what was interesting
Robyn.
also was that, like...
all backstage, and she's a ringing.
Yeah, woo! But you're the best hair in LA with a bouffant, and, want to see...
Shelley Winters was in the hairdressing salon, and I was thinking, you're the real deal, and I'm just trying to steal my way in there.
And you did. And you bloody well did.
You're still gorgeous and would look gorgeous. And if they've got any photos there, we'll put them up. And
LA
like
is kooky, and kooky things happen.
Yeah.
It's a bit mad, isn't it?
Oh, it is mad.
And how long were you there for?
I was there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
It was great fun, actually. And, I feel very sad at the moment because a lot of my friends have lost their homes in the Pacific Palisades, and such a big community there. And
tragic, those fires.
It's very sad. Yeah.
So tell us about the spicy Spice Girls.
Oh,
yes,
what
talk
happened
about
there?
that.
So there's a bit of a love story here that happens first. So I had left the day before I got sent to the Sahara Desert. I met my now husband, who I've been married to for 30 years, and said, "Hey, it's so nice to meet you, but I'm going off to the Sahara Desert for 3 weeks, and I'll see you when I get back." And I did the same thing to him and went to America and said, "Hey, I've been offered a job as a correspondent in LA. I'll see you in a year."
Hey, keep him on his toes, isn't it? That's the trick.
Yeah.
That old chestnut, Robyn.
So finally, as he said in the wedding speech, he reeled me back. Finally, reeled me back, and I came back.
Was he an Aussie working in
English?
Oh, English.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Married the English gentleman.
Yeah. But what happened is, sadly, my big mentor in my life had been my grandmother, and she passed away. And at that moment, I had that sort of sense of, who do I really want to be with at the moment to, console me? And it was Joe. And that's when I realised that he was the love of my life and worth leaving the glitter of Los Angeles. And I went back to the UK and got a job in breakfast television at GMTV, which was also great fun. And hence the Spice Girls story, because that was back in the early 90s. And I was running the Showbiz desk. And so we put a lot of people on for the first time. We broke a lot of acts like Backstreet Boys and like loads of them.
Yeah.
But one of them was the Spice
I should have
Girls.
come on.
I know,
I
can't break into a song. What's the Spice Girls one? And Di loves singing, don't you?
Damn it, Robyn, why didn't I know you back then?
No need to be shy, Di.
Shy day. So, okay,
Never.
hit me with it.
Okay, so what they did was a bit different. Is that they came in with the tape recorder, and they had that little tape, and they were sort of like all talking to me at the once. They wanted to meet us to sort of like, because you had to sort of get through us to sort of like get on the show. And there were 16 million viewers a week that we had on that show.
That's huge.
So we would virtually, that could guarantee you get a number one
16
spot after
million.
being on
It
the
was
show.
the population of Australia then, and it was the thing.
It was the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that and Big Breakfast, those two
Yes.
shows, they're really
Huge.
part of the culture and
Very
back
much
then.
so, yes.
And so the girls sort of introduced themselves. I'm Sporty Spice, and I'm Posh Spice, and I'm Baby Spice, and I'm Scary Spice, and I'm,
Wow.
and so then they put the tape into the tape deck, and started singing, "Would you be my lover?" like this.
Would my love, you know that one?
Yeah, I do.
My friend.
That's amazing.
And Sporty Spice, while I was watching them sing, started doing backflips. She was doing backflips, which was quite, Posh Spice was so timid back then, really quiet.
Right.
Victoria Beckham.
Yeah, she still doesn't smile
Interesting.
much, but anyway.
No, she's not
we'll leave that
smiley, is
one.
she? She's
Not
never
very
she's never going to get a
smiley.
Colgate
Not like us.
thing. I know.
Not like
She's got
us.
the big
Well, we
shiny
love
white
to show
teeth.
our teeth. So, okay, so
So we
you're
put them
going,
on
you're,
the show.
okay. And obviously, that was like an audition sort of thing. Yeah, you'll do. We'll get you on
And
the
that was
show.
the first time really on prime time television.
That was their first-
So there you go,
Wowza.
folks. Robyn, who's talking to you in your ears now.
So it's never
we
too
can
late
thank for
to
the
get
Spice
on.
Girl.
Yeah, Spice
Girl.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then you got married, and so you ended up with the love of your life. And
Yeah.
then he ended up being an Aussie then, did he? You brought
Well,
him
I
out to
brought him
Australia,
back.
He followed
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Notice
I
how
brought
she
him back.
dragged him into the spicy bit of this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I did a lot
30 years of marriage
before I
is
left.
really
Love
something.
Before I went back to Australia, Joe, I sort of had my kids, and I started just working as a freelance writer. So I wrote for Hello magazine, and I did all their
wow.
How
covers.
fabulous.
Yes, yeah.
How fabulous.
So-
I love.
We like Hello magazine.
That's one
I
magazine.
like Hello,
I've
and I
stuck
like
by.
Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still
So,
can't. To be honest, you can't
like-
beat the Aussie Woman's Weekly. I mean,
No,
it's true.
absolutely. I
That
used
is
to read the
iconic. You know,
Bible.
something my grandma loved that.
It's-
My mum loved
it's so
that.
true.
And everyone, and we still love it.
I know,
It's
we do.
iconic.
I don't read it as much as I used to, like a lot of people with magazines in general now. But we ran into someone actually, you passed the microphone to at the
Julia Zayada.
at the Women's International Yearly Infinity Breakfast.
Yes, yeah.
I love what she said. Robyn held the microphone up to her, and she's a very well-known editor.
Oh, yeah. She was
House and
editor of
Garden,
Women's
am I
Weekly
right?
as well.
Something like
Yes,
that.
Then she was
that's right.
Better Homes and Gardens.
Like she's really
editor.
reputable editor. And
Oh, yes.
and I can't remember what you asked her, but it was fascinating what she said about magazines, because for all of you guys listening now, I was just at the hairdressers a couple of hours ago. Not that you can tell, but
Oh,
that's
looks
another
good.
story.
Don't you're looking
great.
good, baby.
They're great
Really good.
hairdressers. So
Maybe like the LA, like Robyn had, like we were getting ready for the
Will it get me
Oscars.
at the back of the Oscars?
High
I don't
heaven.
think sorry. But she, what I loved is that she talked about, because, there's something tickling always in the back of my head about, I love a magazine. When I grab it, I go, oh, it's like a best friend that I've been missing, for a long time. And she said, well, actually, they're making a comeback.
And they're calling them Lean Back.
Lean back and lean forward.
Lean back.
She said
and
lean
read
forward
them.
is with digital.
Yeah.
And she said lean back.
And
is with a
isn't that
magazine.
straight away comforting?
And that hit home with
it's
me.
relaxing.
Because your feet up, cup of tea, whatever.
Yeah. It's also
and
a
you're
you time.
digital, you're like really intense, you're a little bit of whatever.
But you
It's
go on
weird,
holidays,
the structure,
Diane.
your body.
We go. So if you go away with girlfriends straight away, they go straight up and they buy mags too, don't they?
Yes,
like that.
it's
Because it's sort of
true.
like because you're going to be on, you're going to have a cocktail, you have a magazine,
Yes.
and you have this, and it's one of those things there. And I still like them, like even in your home, to have really nice ones on the coffee
Absolutely.
table,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, to read and to
Yeah,
enjoy.
Vogue
But I used to
Interiors and
devour
and all
them,
those ones
though.
there. So
But
let's
it's good
sort of
they're making a comeback.
So tell us about what was it like working and how did that come up with the Australian Women's Weekly? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's really
that's huge.
massive.
It's an iconic magazine, and it was a privilege to edit that magazine, I have to say, because you sort of had a responsibility to its history and
It is.
and covering really important stories that mattered, and you were sort of like they're historical. Like I remember, for instance, the Black Saturday bushfires, and we'd actually just put the magazine to bed. And I was like, under my watch, I can't not, cover this momentous event that's happened. So I sent to a journalist and photographer down to cover it, and their pictures and coverage, was quite extraordinary. And sure that they'll be used, as references from years to come. But there was that responsibility, and it was also picking. I remember when Barack Obama became president, I put Michelle and Barack Obama on the cover,
Wow.
and that was there was that did incredibly as well, because people were ready to for him to
And embrace the change.
embrace
too.
the change.
The cover of the Woman's Weekly is such a big deal, isn't it? Who
Huge.
gets it?
Yeah.
And was that ultimately your tick of approval?
Absolutely,
Editor.
the
the buck stop. I mean, how exciting!
buck stop
Yeah.
with
And
me,
tell us your time frame when you were doing that.
Yeah, so I came. What happened was that I first had to bribe my husband to leave England,
Yes.
and I went to edit and look after magazines in New Zealand, and I then ended up becoming editor-in-chief of New Idea first. And so when I was at New Idea, decided I'd just channel Women's Weekly, and I had big budgets, so I could get
Good
to cover
people.
all the stories that I wanted. So I started doing things like on New Idea, just championing things like breast cancer. Actually, one of the very poignant covers I did was my mother had a double mastectomy, and I'd never seen a woman ever show the fact that she had both breasts removed. And my mother's pretty brave. And I said, Mum, will you do this? Because it'd be great empowering to tell the story of, what got you through and everything. And Mum did it, and that was an all-female.
Did she?
Fabulous.
Yes.
Wow, there's the
That's
courage,
great.
isn't it?
That's
Amazing.
incredible. So you were doing. You were in New Zealand. You were saying you were doing.
I was in New Zealand. My
New
first
Idea.
job before I started, they made me editor of New Idea, and then also in charge of all of the Pacific magazines there. So that included Marie Claire and Girlfriend and those types of magazines.
Well, so
And
popular, weren't they?
they're very popular.
Young. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh wow, this is Sam. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool.
Magazine.
Yeah.
Remember Dolly? All those magazines.
Yeah.
Love them. You learned so much information from that.
It just made me think what Nicola said in the intro about, you were voted one of B&T's most powerful women in media. I mean, this is huge. I mean, at one stage, the publisher and editor of Australia's three biggest flagship mags, the Australian Women's Weekly, Women's Day, and No Idea. Sorry, I have to say that.
No. Well, hasn't it changed though a bit?
Plus,
You know,
you're a
like
Seven
that,
Network executive as well.
I've been on the cover of the No Idea.
Plus
I've
a
got to
mother
say.
with two boys.
And it was all a beat up story. It was,
can
it was a beat up story. That I was going to get married. Because I was at the Logies in a white dress or whatever, and and they just sort of made this sort of thing up. It's quite funny how they could just make stories up, like that.
No
or
idea.
Put things, no idea. I know.
I'm going to have to weigh in here because when I was at New Idea in New Zealand, the first issue that I had was the tsunami. And because that magazine had actually at that time a worse reputation than it had here, I decided it's actually easier to run a magazine that's not doing that is rubbish and has a rubbish reputation because you've got more to work on, to build it up. And so you do proper news stories and you do campaigns like run rings around Australia to get women healthy, and you do, put breast cancer on the cover of magazines. And probably the one that I won Editor of the Year award for was I put domestic violence on the cover of New Idea. And the whole issue, I said, how am I going to cover?
Congratulations on that, because that is such a huge, important thing.
Yes,
and to recognise.
What are we talking, 90s?
Oh, yes. It was 20 years ago that I did this.
Talk about things like that behind
a lot of
closed
things were
doors
taboo,
too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sadly.
So what I did on this particular was, how am I going to do this? And because the domestic violence did not go on the cover of magazines. And so I decided that I'd do a treatment and make it the white issue. So I got, Chris Hemsworth was in Home and Away back then. Very dishy then even,
I reckon he might be one of the James Bond.
He's very James Bond, isn't
Very
he?
James Bond. Anyway, so we got the whole cast of Home and Away with white T-shirts and jeans in the water, the ocean, up to their sort of like thighs, and the headline was "Enough is Enough." And I did a survey on how big the problem was in Australia. I did, how do we break the cycle of violence? And it was a beautiful gatefold cover, and I had all of the people like Lisa Wilkinson with a white car and Spotty Dalmatians in a picture shoot, but the whole emphasis was, on domestic violence. And there was some really sad stories that came out of it because, and positive stories, mind you, because we raised money for women who were suffering. But, some women had to fill in the magazine. They were buying 2 issues because they didn't want the husbands who were beating them.
Yes.
They didn't want them to see that they were filling out the survey, and they wrote that in the survey.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so,
how's that? Wow.
And so Black Friday, domestic violence, what are some of the uplifting moments for you with the stories behind all these magazines?
I
What
think
moments do you recall?
Yeah.
I covered Princess Mary's wedding in the church.
Beautiful.
I was actually there in the
Beautiful.
church.
How
looking
It's
at-
my favourite wedding dress and headdress out of any royal.
It was quite
Exquisite.
funny.
Don't you
because-
love that she met her prince
Yeah.
good old slip in
In a bar,
Sydney,
the old
like
slip in.
that.
I thought this story is just fantastic. I want to go and cover it. So
I know. And we love Fred.
yeah,
Actually, it's so cool. It's just so cool.
It was so cool.
She
And-
was just born.
Oh
to
no!
be
And everyone
royal,
wanted to
you
be
know.
that princess, that
Everyone.
met the charming, beautiful-looking, gorgeous,
Good on her. She
you know,
was the
heir of
Tassie
Yeah.
real estate.
And he was so normal, Fred, sailing around.
Yeah, sailing around.
You know, he seemed normal. I didn't know him that well. Yeah. I didn't meet him at the slip-in. Did you meet him at the slip-in?
Gabriella, my daughter's hung out with him. She's done speedboats and whatever in Italy and stuff
He
with
sailed
him.
a lot with
at the
mates.
Biennale
He's
in
a
Italy
groover.
and stuff like that. Yeah, and she says
He's a
he's just great
dude.
doing the shots and little singing and
Anything else that sort of was fabulous that you remember? That was
Any other ones with
like
big
exciting.
iconic covers? Because
Yes,
you're saying
yeah,
Michelle and Barack Obama. Who else?
Oh, well, we put, so many people on the cover. I mean, there was, Barack Obama. There was, we specialised in weddings, I have to say. All the major weddings we covered. Olivia Newton-John was my first cover.
Wow.
Then the next cover was the 3 gold medalists that like Libby and Stephanie and
Oh, the swimmers.
the swimmers.
Okay, yes.
What was challenging about that was they were going to China for the Beijing Olympics, and we didn't have time to shoot them, so we compiled the photos and compiled them together like they were together, because there's always a backstory behind the cover,
I bet.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that, of course, I didn't know whether they were going to win, so I called them the Golden Girls.
Brilliant.
Oh, that's
and that's
good,
stuck.
isn't it?
And that's stuck.
Isn't
And
it?
yeah,
That's
well,
amazing.
I called them the Golden Girls because they hadn't won. I couldn't say they were winners.
Brilliant.
But
I
when
love
I think it was Libby who won the third medal, and I was like, yes, they are truly.
Tell us about the transition, because then we all know then magazines were popular, but then they kind of weren't, and then digital came on the scene, and so what happened? Tell us how you've sort of embraced that, and now the revival, I guess, was saying of magazines, but it obviously went quiet and digital. And tell us about that.
Yeah, I think I sort of went from those halcyon days of magazines, and there was 1 in 3 people who were reading the magazines that a week in Australia. It was
Incredible.
very, most people were buying 3 back then. 3 magazines easily a week, and so
my mum used to get confused at the grocery store. She'd go, "Oh no, Prince Charles is doing something." That was on Women's Day. Then she'd go to the next one. "Oh, it's
I know,
fine."
people believe it,
There I
it's
come
just
going,
a
"Mum,
fair."
for God's sake!" It used to do her head in, and then consequently mine. That like it was the Bible.
Yeah,
they
it was
believe
definitely the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, going back, of course, it was the 75th birthday issue that I did for Women's Weekly, and if you look at the history of Women's Weekly, the reason it was the Bible was because women, particularly in the country, didn't have the sort of information that they wanted to. So they looked at the photos to understand what latest fashion was.
Right.
They
True.
relied.
That's amazing.
So was it the internet then that sort of like changed everything? Like then it was digital and
the
stuff
turning
there.
point. Good question.
Turning point. Well, there was this
'Cause
big
then there's-
turning
I forget
point.
about that. The internet.
So, you
Yeah.
think
Come
that's
so
where it was.
far down
So
the
tell
other
us how
road.
you embrace that.
Yeah.
So I was wanting
Or
to be sort
ran.
of like involved in the sort of the digital side of the world of media, because I didn't want to be a dinosaur in my own industry. So I recognised that it wasn't going to be long before most of the ads weren't going to be served to magazines; they were going to be served to the digital outlets, and that happened quite quickly 10 years
It's
ago.
interesting you say
Amazing
that.
the speed, isn't
Yeah.
it? how
Like,
Like, what are we
it's
very
talking? What
quickly.
time frame?
This is this happened like 10 years ago.
So from magazine to digital,
Yeah.
you say it happened quickly over what time frame?
Oh, very well. Sort of suddenly, I went to 7, and then I went back as a group publisher of all the women's titles at went from ACP to Bauer magazines. It's now R magazines, and in that time, there was the digital side of things was massively changing. So I ran Harper's Bazaar, and our numbers were not as big as, say, because remember, this is the time when the influencers started.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
So the whole platform sort of
Wow.
changed for everybody.
So, like,
now,
we're
isn't
talking
it?
a matter of years, just very short space.
Very
of time.
short period of
Wow,
time.
that's incredible.
Well, when
So
you
I can't
think about
recall.
the boom
So consumed by it.
of mobile phones and things like, and all of a sudden you get your news now, on your phone, and how things have changed so
Yeah.
quickly.
So
So I
true.
sort of
Right.
get that.
And that's the other thing, is that you've got to look at what the mediums that are popular now, like and how like when I realised that my children weren't reading magazines, and my friends' children weren't reading magazines, but they were on their phone, which became like your little mini computer, which became your photo album, which became everything.
So true.
and
Libraries.
so
Yeah.
most websites, they don't. If you look at like my websites, Women Love Tech, the Carousel and Game Changers, the viewership is all on the mobile. We're designing things often for the big screen, but it's not really happening on the big screen. It's happening in the palm of people's hands.
That's so interesting, isn't it? It's true.
it's good.
I do Zoom calls and a lot of things because you're on the run.
Yeah,
and
I
I'll
do
just
everything on that.
Do it all on that. And
So while you're on that subject, tell us about Women Love Tech. What is that all
yeah.
about?
So I left magazines, and I started the Carousel first, which is a women's lifestyle side. And as magazines were closing and editors were losing their jobs, I was bringing them all on board the Carousel, and I started doing short form content. This is like 12
So tell
years
us,
ago.
what's the carousel, just for listeners?
Yeah,
out
it's a
there,
women's lifestyle site. So we have health and beauty and fashion and travel and sustainability. So that was my first website, and then I got very interested in technology. And I bought Women Love Tech from a woman who wasn't keen to continue it, and I thought, women and tech is so enabling. Tech is so enabling for us women for so many reasons. And then I sort of realised that statistics were so poor of the number of women. If you think about technology, we have flexibility in our jobs. We have, it's highly paid. It's the growth and innovation sector. And so why wouldn't you have an even balance of men and women in these technologies? But like AI is huge. Only a third of women are involved in AI at the moment. let's hope that changes.
Do you think it's a fear factor, or do you think it's uneducated?
It goes back to young girls, and that we're sort of steered away from STEM. I don't know about you, but when I was at school...
Explain for those that do
Yeah,
not know
so
what
STEM subjects are your sort of science, maths, engineering.
It's very true.
Mathematics.
I think it is
Yeah.
very true, and that's great when you see that is changing now. But
Thank
it was sort of
God.
technical. You know, it was
Yes.
years ago, but still, it was
Yeah.
sort of like, do you want to be a nurse or do you want to be a
Yes.
primary
School
teacher?
teacher.
That's what I
Or
got
whatever,
asked.
and that was
Or a
it. You know,
hostess.
or
Yeah, yeah.
if you're lucky to fly internationally, you know, like that. You know,
Happy days for that.
Exactly.
But yeah, so women are really picking up, doing the heavy lifting when it comes to caring, those caring roles, the often poorly paid and unappreciated, but hugely vital roles are being left to women, and we need to encourage women to actually get involved in tech companies from a young age so that they can be part of our future, because tech is determining our future, and it is exciting. So I got very excited by tech, and then I even joined an ASX board called Sweep was the company, and I built a geolocation augmented reality app for Vivid.
How wonderful.
Wait a minute, as you do.
I know. So for all the
Go, Robyn.
international listeners, you know, tell us what Vivid is
Yeah.
too.
Okay,
It's
so for the
extraordinary.
international
Listeners, yeah.
viewers, listeners,
So we told you she was a dynamo.
No.
Bloody hell.
Vivid is a great event that we have here in Sydney, which is really a celebration of innovative ideas. And so back when I did this, it was 2019, with my team, we were working with augmented reality. So what we were doing is there's a new word that came up back then, it was called gamification. And so the technology we had was AI, AR, geolocation and gamification. And so
What language is she speaking,
So we've
Nicola?
got AI is artificial intelligence.
We've got that
Tell us-
one.
and
What's
tell
the
us
others?
AR.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
okay.
Sam. Thanks
Yeah.
for being more
Yeah.
switched on.
Okay, and then because we want let's get to the basics here.
Oh,
AI, yeah.
And geolocation sort of, is mapping
Where you
where
are.
you're going.
Yeah.
And
Which
AI,
is so good.
Yeah.
You can find out exactly. That's where people spy on one another. Where are you?
And what's the last one? What's the last one?
Gamification.
Oh, it's Sam.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
So when you do your games on your phone, is that your gaming thing?
No. So sort of
Okay,
when
tell us.
so gamification is a way of it's using the sort of gaming. Why gaming is so popular is because it's built in with gamification. So you're always wanting to get further into it because there's something exciting going to happen. So for the Vivid app, what they wanted was to take people not just to Darling Harbour, which is where they tended to have the
See all the
event.
lights everywhere. It's just amazing.
They wanted to take people also to Darling Harbour and also to Taronga Zoo and also to King's Cross where the big fountain is.
Yes.
And so what we did is we gamified it by saying we could tell through geolocation, if you went to all of these different places, then you then could be part of the people who win a prize, and Samsung was the sponsor, so you won the latest Samsung phone. But the other thing that you could do is when you got to those places, if it was really busy, these installations, you could hold the phone up and you could see through augmented reality. So you'd hold the phone up and you would actually be able to see what the installation was about, the history of it. And
How brilliant.
Yeah, without having to sort of like fight between people. So we took that further, and one of the other sponsors was TAFE, New South Wales, and we got their artists to create artwork. And the artwork was incredible because we were showing people's artwork in a very new form, an immersive form. And so you would go to the fountain at King's Cross, you would hold up your phone using the app, and these amazing artworks would suddenly appear.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's like you see in the Opera House now
It's
when they do that
incredible.
and they put that, and it's just now sort
It
of
lights
shown
up all
around-
the sales.
all
It's
around the
magnificent.
world.
Yeah.
But just tell us now, because we've got a lot of our listeners too, and they go tech and they go, look, I've kind of that ship has sailed. I
But it
can't
hasn't.
Yeah.
do that.
I'm fearful.
And it's so good to hear it hasn't, because a lot of people go tech, no. What you used to say,
Yeah.
like young person, I don't know
Yeah,
how to
in
do
the office,
this. And
I'd
a
say
lot of
young
people
person,
still,
please.
Robyn,
It's true.
It's great, and
Yeah.
you're a really great role model. But just like there are still people who are hesitant out there, going, you know what, I don't know how to use that. That's sort of like I don't know.
Switch
What
off.
do you say for basic steps to get into it? Like to just
And
don't
flip
be
the switch.
afraid.
Yeah.
Use AI, because I might go, this AI, it's going to be too scary. It's,
Yeah.
and they're fearful.
Well, this is what I would say. First of all, be curious.
Yeah.
Because
Ooh, good
That's a great one.
word.
We love
if you're
that.
curious,
Flip
then
it round.
you'll want to understand it, and then when you get to understand it and see the benefits of it, then it becomes really exciting, because you can do things like from the day-to-day things that would have taken you a long time, like planning your flight and trip to your European vacation or wherever it is, and that can all be done using AI, and you can get the best times to book your flights using AI. What's going to happen with travel with AI is going to be huge, but even things like
that's fascinating, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
yeah, oh, good, yeah. So you can literally, whether there's a number of different, they call them large language models, and they are, for instance, and all owned by the big tech companies. So generally, but that's changing too. So you have Microsoft owns Copilot, and Google owns its own version, and it goes on. So, and then there's obviously Chat GPT.
Who owns
Yes.
that? Is
Yeah.
that-
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that
that is
seems
amazing.
to be the one that everyone kind
Yeah,
of knows.
it seems
It's
to
on
be the
phone.
generic sort
That's
of
the
AI
one
version.
that sort of kicked it all off. I mean, but there is another side to AI that I have to sort of like bring up, and that is that
Well, it's a balanced argument then, really.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to have responsible AI, and I'm someone who's very concerned about unconscious bias being
Yeah.
used in AI.
Yeah, I believe
know.
I've thought about that too much, actually.
Yeah, well, you can just put
I
in,
can't-
like CEO and put image, and it'll be all men, and they'll be all white men, and they'll be all 50 years old, like for example. So, what happens when women, young girls, are seeing that those sort of representations, and much worse things, like for instance, it can be used in harmful ways. So we have to be very careful. There are a lot of what they call existential risks of AI that we've got to be aware of. And
Break that down a little bit.
okay, when technology comes out as an innovation. And it comes out before the bureaucracy or the government regulations can regulate it. And so the best way to describe it is like the Wild West. So AI is no doubt our second revolution. So we had, the steel revolution and industrial revolution.
Like, get on board, really.
And
but you've
now
got to
it's
be
the
careful
AI
of the risks.
revolution.
The AI revolution.
Wow, that's an amazing
and
way of putting it.
It is It will absolutely, and we haven't even seen the likes of it yet.
Wow.
So it's early days.
It's early days, and
But I like to even just was saying, so someone's like listening here going, well, I'm going to go on a holiday, and just makes it so much easier now.
Yes.
You can go there and get sort of like then the cheapest price, because on a Tuesday
Yeah.
here, work it all out and
Yeah.
put it all in, and it comes up, and it's just amazing how it's so accurate.
yeah.
Exactly. So, for instance, my niece is with me at the moment, and she's learning to do scuba diving. So she put the information that she has to learn, and gave it the hints. So you have to learn to do these prompts for AI. The better the prompts, the
give
better.
us some tips.
Yeah. The better the prompts, the easier, the better.
As in, what's a prompt?
Okay, a good prompt would be, here is the information that I need to learn to be a scuba diver. I am doing a test and want to make this much more easy to digest and understand. Can you please simplify it?
Bingo. Isn't that good?
So my question to you is, if you're at university studying medicine, architecture, engineering, and you're using AI, do you think they learn that they actually at the end of the degree? Do you think they're going to absorb as much information as opposed to?
Yeah, I do have a fundamental concern about people's ability to lose the capability to write because it's taking over as a way of being able to edit. So you might be a crap editor or have full of spelling mistakes and the likes, and the AI will do it better than you can possibly do. Even some of the best writers that can write better.
But if the AI is typing it out for you and you're not researching it and whatever, which to me that's how the brain works.
That's
to absorb
correct.
the information to get a degree.
Yeah.
But if the AI is doing it for you essentially,
Yeah.
what's the consequences of
So
that?
the consequences could be that it makes you not learn to do the research and develop parts of your brain that are quite important. So there are some things we just have not figured out
it's coming
yet.
so fast.
It's coming at us like
revolution, as you said.
But it's interesting too, because I was hearing sort of like on the flip side as well, is like Salius was saying with doctors and things too, but they're going, when doctors say are trained really before that, they've got their degree, then they go in and bang, they're doing an operation, and that's sort of like, they just have to just do it there.
They go to ChatGPT.
Whereas now they can do it with the enhancement of
Yes.
AI as sort of like a backing area for them as well. Than just going in beforehand, they could just go in and there was no sort of like real consequences. It's sort of like off you go. You've learnt that at uni. Free, you're going to do it. Whereas now they've
AI
got that
will end
sort of
up
the
doing
support.
all the operations.
Well,
I
they
think.
do it
Those
as a conjunction
robots,
together.
I think
Yeah.
that's the future.
and
without
also
a doubt.
Planes land now, like on without the captain. It's sort of like straight away they
Yes.
go on automatic landing, and you just
Terrifying
go, wow.
thought.
But
It's true.
so many of the
It's
flights
true.
are on and
I know.
work with the airlines,
Yeah.
and you just
but that's
hear
been
it.
prior to AI, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
that's all-
AI's been going
that's
for
the
a
AI.
very long time.
in
But
a
that's
small way,
that's all
Yeah.
part
Now
of the
it's-
whole thing.
But it's early days still.
But yes, and
Yeah.
it's
So
and
tell
it's
us
getting
how
smarter.
should we get on board? Should people then go with Women Love Tech, or tell us about?
Yeah.
Tell us how.
So we've
people
Because
get
you're a
involved in
great
it.
mentor
Oh, thank
particularly
you.
for women. And
Because you've really got
I
me
really want to thank
inspired
you for
to
that.
learn more.
So
And I
how
think
do
a
they
lot
go
of people
about
there, I really
how
am
do-
inspired.
yeah.
And I think a lot of other people will be, because I used to go, I want to know more, but I don't really know how and what to do. And then technical thing, I was thinking, it's probably a bit too much for me. But
It's
now,
not.
I'm really sort of like feeling empowered more.
Yes.
And it can
Yeah.
free your life up a bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good things. And, let's get on the ride, guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you
So
can't
we're-
fight it, can you?
No.
It's
So
there.
we're doing two things. We've just launched our own mentoring platform on Women Love Tech so that you can
Yay.
sign up and be mentored or be a mentee. And we're also planning to do some AI courses to make it, to simplify it.
I'm so putting my hand up for that.
so this
is
I really am. And any other
We'll
listener.
put this on
'cause I
our
wanna learn.
on our show notes.
Yeah,
everyone
great.
knows.
For
Thank
life,
you,
guys.
guys.
And I got a hell of a lot
always
to
going
learn.
over. Oh my God, I could talk to you to the cows come home. But I do want to say one thing is. Listeners, you've heard the interview today. She's the most dynamic human.
Oh, amazing.
I love
Totally.
I love a Bex and a lie down. I love to have a little lava, sleep somewhere. Where do you get the energy from? For God's sake!
No,
What do
no,
you-
Liz has got
How do you
definitely more than me.
how do you do this? How do you? Seriously.
I think I love what I do. I always loved storytelling from when I was a little girl growing up in the country. It was
Magic.
a bit isolated in Mudgee, let me tell you.
That's magic.
That's beautiful, though, isn't
And
it?
I still get
so your
excited by
passion,
it.
you run on passion.
And I love the fact that technology allows me to tell stories in different ways. And I think that it's interesting because media has totally democratized so that people are everyone's got a voice now. Like, it was the case that as editor-in-chief of Women's Weekly, I decided what was going to be the cover. I literally was curating, news in the magazine that everyone read. But now, actually, we're our own creators of content.
Interesting.
And so you
Thanks
have
to
these,
podcasts.
hence the podcast.
Influencers.
And what do you do? Do you walk? We're running out of time, but walk, inspire women, go, how does she do it? How do you balance your world? Besides passion.
And she's been happily married. Any tips on that?
Two kids.
Get the man
Do
from
you walk?
England
Get a
to
very
follow you
patient
out.
husband.
What's
That's what I'd
your
say.
backup as into chill zone? What do you
My
do?
chill zone is at the moment it's
Music,
rowing.
dancing, rowing.
Rowing.
There you go.
Whoa,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. Still
and
water.
swimming and
Still
swimming.
water.
I did a rough
Swimming, there you
rough
go.
water.
Dies a fish.
Yeah, I love
I
swimming.
did the rough water mastery at Coleroy Beach
Good
on
girl.
Saturday.
Oh, that's scary.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great with the cyclonic
I'm getting
bloody
into it more now because
tides.
Lane
It's
Beach, she
great.
told me off because I said I didn't
She's
want to get my
great.
hair
She's a
done.
Melbourne girl.
I had
Yeah.
the Hollywood sort of hair done, and I didn't want to get out because Nicola going to get out the back. And I said,
So rowing and swimming, it's always important
Family balance.
For anyone listening,
the balance
your
is
world.
right. And actually, I remember once someone saying to me that, Robyn, you can be a really successful editor or journalist, but unless you have your balance in life right, you're actually not a success.
Wow.
And
I
I've
love that.
always
We
remembered
love
that.
Got to remember that line for
Yeah.
our book. I love that.
Well, AI's going to remember it for us.
You know that AI is being used as a therapist. You know that
love
AI.
that.
Transcripts.
That
I'm
was
learning
brilliant.
everything now.
I love it. Oh, you have to do anything. Just press a button. Done. Can you iron?
They'll
Yep,
do it all
done.
in 5 minutes. Our book is done, Di.
And my last question, I know we're running out of time, is did you have a mentor yourself?
Do you know my own mentor was my grandmother? Because when I was
love
growing
that.
up, we didn't have
What
sort
was
of
her
mentors.
name?
Marjorie.
That's beautiful.
Marjorie. I
Yeah,
like
and
that
she
name.
was a beautiful woman
That's
who
special.
I learnt so much from, and I loved her dearly.
Well,
And
and country too, time.
yes.
Just cooking the
And didn't your
scones.
dad, I've listened to a couple of things, wasn't your grandfather sort of said you could do anything as well? He was a bit of a positive injection in
Yeah, he
Robyn.
was. My grandfather said to me, and I remember being about, that awkward teenager. And he said to me, Robyn, I wish I was around for when you're older, because one thing I know about you is that you can do anything that you set out to. You will be able to achieve anything that you set out to. And so I actually took him at face value.
Yep.
I thought, I can actually, can't I? And my,
So that was your grandfather?
that was my grandfather,
God.
but in terms of my mother was also a very strong figure, because she had 5 children in the country, and growing up, we grew up in the country, and then she saw me at university and came to my the day that I received my degree, and she was trying to
Graduation.
put on my cape and hat, and I'm like, Mum, if you want to wear these fashion accessories, you've got to go and get your own degrees.
Yeah.
Anyway, blow
No.
me down, she's got a PhD.
I love
She went to
it.
Oxford. She went to Oxford.
At what age did she do
in her
that?
60s.
You know what?
How do
just
you do that in the
another
country? She's
thing-
moved to the city.
Oh, yeah.
You know
Thank
what?
God.
We are
Sydney,
all
Rosemary.
Doing my head in
about,
otherwise.
transforming your life. You
Yes.
can
Yeah.
flip it. You can
I
change
love it.
things at
You
any
can flip
age and
it.
stage.
Let's
We're
do a
all
podcast
about
on your mum.
kicking
Yeah.
ass at any age, and we think you're a role model. But I tell you what,
are.
hands off to your mother.
Yeah,
because
bless.
for her to
And
do
grandma
that,
and
and
Pam.
grandma,
Are we
it
getting
goes
the
in
wind up?
that strong line. But okay,
Wind up 5-10 minutes.
I know. But we
I did a bit of this with Sam.
We split into a
I'm so
two-part series,
fascinated.
but we've got
Okay.
Robyn here. Okay, who wants to rock and roll? I think I will. Di's having a little coughing little fit, the poor darling here.
I've had a bit of a lurgy.
If you could share a back fence with anybody on planet Earth, Robyn, who would it be and why?
Jane Fonda.
Oh, you and I had twins, baby. That's
We love
exactly
her.
what I said too.
We
Wow,
love her.
tell me why.
Because she is such an inspiration to me, and has always been, I always say to young women that they need to sort of put their head above the parapet. They need to not be invisible. They need to be heard. And Jane Fonda has done that throughout her whole career, and she's always put herself into matters that are really important and worth her time. And so I remember when she turned 60, she said, now I'm spending the rest of my life and it's going to be on the environment, and that's what she campaigns for.
Convictions.
Now she has the conviction,
Yeah.
and she's fearless, and I love fearless
Tenacious.
women.
Wow, and she's coming out to Australia, so watch
love
this
that.
space.
Yes.
Jane Fonda,
We're
we
tempting to-
love you.
Move
Yeah.
her this way.
Come to the back fence, Jane.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, last question. It's a hard one because we've got a choice of two.
Oh, you can just throw them. I'll keep on going.
If you had the
with Robyn.
opportunity of meeting your 21-year-old self, what would you say to her and why?
I would actually say to learn 2 things, to say yes and to say no, when to say those 2 things. Because, you
I get
need to
that.
take opportunity and say yes to things even if you're scared. You need to recognise when you need to say no. And so I say yes a lot, too much, and it's exhausting because, I always want to please. And so one thing that I'm trying to do is to actually look after me. It's like, the old,
Oxygen mask.
oxygen mask, we
So
all
true.
know. And so sometimes we can, us as women particularly,
Yeah.
we drain every bit of energy we've got because we, want to give all the time, but we've got to learn to give back to ourselves.
That's
I love
such a
that.
beautiful
That was beautiful.
thing.
So you would say that to your 21-year-old self.
So
How
it's like
beautiful. That's
say
very
yes,
powerful.
but to have your boundaries up.
Yeah.
And we've got to throw it in because,
So
you know,
there's
it's not every day we get Robyn,
No,
you know, the
no.
back fence.
Little old me. I don't know what you're talking
oh,
about.
you're not a little old
the girl
me, let me
from
tell you.
Mudgee, you know, who
Yeah.
snuck into the Oscars
Great
and got
wines out of
crashed and
Mudgee.
whatever.
Very
And
good
they
wines.
certainly
Love
do.
Mudgee
What makes
wine.
you happy?
You know, I find that family that make me very happy. You know, I've got 2 beautiful sons and a beautiful
Who've
husband.
been very successful.
And I'm very grateful to, you know, I feel blessed that I've got these gorgeous men in my life. And, you know, it's...
Heaven.
I never take it for granted, and I love spending time with them.
You'd be the best mummy,
I
Mo.
know.
Oh,
Look at
they've
them,
moved to
beautiful.
America,
Strong
my
and
2
soft.
sons. And
Good holidays. You just get out the AI thing
that's
and
right.
get the best
I've
thing
got
there
AI
on it.
working
It's
on
like
it, don't you
exactly.
worry.
Yeah, good girl.
Well,
good
look,
girl.
you know, thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming
thank
on.
you,
Thank you
Robyn.
for
Everybody,
having
thank
me.
you for
Thank
listening.
We
you.
last sued you.
Don't forget to rate and review.
You
this
guys
one
are
here
great, I
is,
tell
you
you.
know.
You're just
Well,
like, I love you guys.
Oh, well, you know more than
I wish you were
anyone, so
both over my back fence.
Hey, you're welcome up to Palmy, that's for sure.
I'll be up to Palmy for sure.
Now, we liked us, like everyone, to rate. Di likes to give her own ratings. Now we've got Robyn Foyster here
It's
at the
a
back
hard
fence.
one.
What does Robyn get from Jidey?
How do you get over 5 out of AI?
Yeah, come
Over
on.
5
Put it in the.
out of AI.
At
I'm
the
just going to
AI.
give you 50 out of 5.
Oh, wow.
I say that. Wow. Thank you for listening. Back in
You're
your
the
ears.
champion.
Ciao, ciao.
Look forward to chatting next week. Bye.